Hey guys, Ted here again with DreadCentral.com, and I'm here to talk to you about the new action-adventure game from Deck 13, The Surge. Now, Deck 13 was previously known for Lords of the Fallen, a Dark Souls-style game in a medieval setting that changed a few things, and I really want to talk about what we can expect from The Surge based on what we know about Lords of the Fallen, and also kind of comparing the Souls series. So this is going to be a video for Souls fans, people that are really huge fans of these type of games. I'm not going to talk about, the story setting or some of the more specific mechanics. That's going to be in the accompanying article that's going to go with this video. So check that out there if you're really interested in more of the nitty-gritty details of The Surge. But today I'm just going to be talking about it in comparison to other games like this in this genre. Now, I'm a huge Dark Souls fan. I've played all of the games. Even actually one of the boxes on the wall right here is my commemorative tin for the original Dark Souls. And then, of course, I got Bloodborne right above it. Oh, I didn't even notice that. And I'm a huge fan of these types of games, the kind of challenge that they present and the kind of the freedom of choice and also the really tight gameplay. And that's really, to me, what a Souls game is tight gameplay, challenging enemies, and it's not afraid to let you die. So Deck 13's previous game, like I said, was Lords of the Fallen, which was very close to Dark Souls. But the big thing that Lords of the Fallen did differently was that your build mattered much more. So in Dark Souls, you start off always as paper thin, and then you become maybe wet noodle, and then 3-day-old baby, and then it just keeps marginally increasing until you reach full Havel's set, in which case you're a tank. But even in full Havel's set, there are, you get, stunned, you take damage from every attack, you get staggered pretty easily, things knock you back pretty well, big swings will knock you down. But in Lords of the Fallen, heavy armor was very heavy, very weighty. If you put on a full heavy armor set, lighter blows would just bounce right off of you. They wouldn't even affect you. But as a result, you also had much slower movement, much slower attacks. So the scale on how your gear and loadout affected your playstyle was much bigger in Lords of the Fallen. Now, a lot of people criticize the combat for being a little bit clunky, and I can see that. I don't think Lords of the Fallen was quite as good as any of the Dark Souls games, but I really liked it for what it did and for what it did differently. I got to talk to the team for a little bit, the people at Deck 13, about The Surge and what we could be expecting to carry over, and one of the first questions I asked was, well, why aren't you doing Lords of the Fallen 2? Why The Surge? And they said that they wanted to take The Surge in a very different direction. So it's still a Dark Souls style game, still challenging combat. But The Surge is going to be a lot more fast-paced, a lot more focused on quick reaction time and a lot of quick action. And in that way, it reminds me more of Bloodborne than Dark Souls. So Bloodborne was the creator of Dark Souls. It was his series that he worked on exclusively for Sony. It's only on the PS4. And it was a much faster game. If you took damage in Bloodborne, you could regenerate it by attacking back very quickly. You could gain some of that health back. Actually, you could gain all of it back. But if you took another hit in that time, you'd lose that health permanently. Or if you just waited too long, you'd lose that health permanently. The Surge has a kind of a similar feel with what they call combat energy. Now, you gain combat energy by landing blows, and the more combat energy you have, the more actions you can perform. One of those actions being healing. So if you want to use your health pack, you have to gain combat energy. That'll recharge your health pack. And that way, that's very similar to Bloodborne. Another thing that The Surge does that's a little bit unique is that there are these things called finisher moves. Now, if you deal enough damage to an enemy, get your combat meter charged all the way up, you can perform a finisher. And the finisher will chop off whatever body part you are locked onto. That's another mechanic, and I'll talk about that in a second. But when you lob that part of the body off, you will gain that crafting recipe to create that item. So if you want to get, full power loader armor set, you can just cut off each of their limbs and then build that yourself, which is, in my opinion, a really great way to handle drops in these games. These kinds of games are always going to have gear that you grind out, random drops, etc., and it can be a really, really, really hard time trying to farm all these out. So actually having a way to reliably farm these out instead of having to just use rusted coins over and over again to increase your drop percentage chance and hope that it, works, you can actually chop the part off and then just kind of have a predictable way to get all the gear that you need. Which will lead me to the next interesting thing about The Surge, which is the body targeting system. So body targeting has always been a thing in the Souls games, but it's never been specific. The most obvious one is the backstab. So you can get behind enemies in Lords of the Fallen and Dark Souls and backstab them for a lot of damage. Also, there's been enemies that have shielded areas, also enemies that have armored areas. There was this pig boss in the first Dark Souls game, sub-boss, is like this pig monster, and armor on its head, but if you hit it in the back, you would deal extra damage. And you could actually hit it under the chin even, because it wasn't armored under its chin. And that was really cool, but it's very hard to reliably pull off those moves. In the Surge, enemies will have specific pieces of their body you can target. So for a basic humanoid enemy, left arm, right arm, head, chest, legs, you can target those individually and try to figure out where their weak point is. So if you see that they don't have any armor on their right arm, you could target that to deal extra damage. I asked if there would be armor degradation, like you can keep hitting the left arm and their armor will fall off, and they said that there are no plans to have that in the game at this point, and it's more of a way to figure out where your enemy's weak point is rather than just hammer on one area and make it weak. I think that this is a really interesting mechanic. I'm not sure if it's going to turn out the best because, part of these games is figuring out attack patterns, etc. And if you can easily lock onto a weak point right away, it might decrease somewhat the explorative factor, like the actual having to use your wits and your skills to figure out the best way to beat the enemy. I'm not going to actually be able to make a full assessment on that until I get my hands on the game, which I haven't had a chance to yet. But I like this idea of greater control, and that control being useful in the executions so you can get gear. So I think the mechanics mesh together pretty well on that. Also, this is a much faster game than Lords of the Fallen was, and that Dark Souls is. They change away from the rolling away, slowly lumbering kind of dodge to a slide dodge that we saw in Bloodborne, which is really, I think, is going to be the takeaway of the Surge, is that Lords of the Fallen was to Dark Souls like the Surge is to Bloodborne. I haven't seen any guns yet, so I don't know how that's going to work out. I haven't seen any of the super heavy armor in the game yet, but they did say that this is a much faster game than Lords of the Fallen was, and I think that they're going to stick with that faster feel. I'm a little bit sad to see there being less build options this time around. You don't have the super heavy lumbering versus the super light mage or the super heavy cleric build or something like that. So I'm a little sad to see that go, but I understand with what they're going for this game. They needed to change the feel, just like Bloodborne needed to change some of the feel from Dark Souls. Another thing that I asked about was the special boss kill conditions that were in Lords of the Fallen. So in Lords of the Fallen, you had special boss kill conditions, like beat this boss without taking any damage, or beat this boss without blocking, and you'll get a special version of their weapon. So that is going to be returning in the Surge, but they said it's going to be a little bit more logical. And with all the enemies dropping multiple items, it'll be interesting to see how they implement this special condition in the game and how that reward is going to play out. Is it going to be an entirely new item? Is it going to be just an upgraded version of the item like it was in Lords of the Fallen? I don't know yet, but I really look forward to seeing how that pans out. Anyways, guys, I'm really looking forward to this one. Of all the Souls-style games that have been coming out, this is one that I think really, really nails the being inspired by, yet being its own thing. I also saw Neo at the show, which I'll make another video about talking about that. But the Surge is the one that when I saw it, I really thought, wow, this looks like it's going to be really cool. So anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Souls fans, I know that you're looking forward to this one, and I'll have more information for you as it develops. Check out my next video. I'm not sure what it's going to be on yet, but whenever that's up, and check out the article. It's going to be in the description below if you want to read more about the Surge, and I'll see you next time.